I brought another woman into my house on a Friday night. Not to cheat, not to provoke, but because sometimes the truth doesn't knock. It walks straight in and sits down. And the moment my wife looked up and saw her standing there, I knew this marriage was already over. Before I tell you how we got to that moment, do me a favor. If you've ever felt invisible in your own relationship, if you've ever been lied to by someone who smiled while doing it, hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about patience and what happens when lies finally meet the people they were meant to stay hidden from. Let me take you back to where this really began. Not the night she was exposed, not the affair itself, but the quiet confidence of a woman who believed she was untouchable. Lauren and I have been married for 8 years. 8 years of shared routines, inside jokes, and the kind of muscle memory that forms when two people live side by side long enough to predict each other's movements without thinking. She was efficient, organized, always 5 steps ahead. Lauren didn't forget things. She didn't leave loose ends. She didn't panic. That's important, because when someone like that starts lying, they don't unravel loudly. They unravel cleanly. Friday nights were usually predictable. Dinner, a show we half-watched. Silence that wasn't awkward, just familiar. That night felt the same. We went to bed just after midnight. Lauren kissed me goodnight, soft and quick, already turning away before I could say anything meaningful. She was humming as she walked toward the bathroom. That's what stuck with me later. The humming. Carefree, light, like she didn't have a single weight on her shoulders. 8 years had taught me her routines well. After intimacy, she always showered. Long, hot showers. Music playing low. Phone left charging on the kitchen counter. Nothing unusual. Until the phone started vibrating. Once. Twice. Then again. I didn't move at first. The vibration was insistent. Not urgent, but confident. Like whoever was on the other end expected a response. I felt irritated more than anything else. Whoever it was clearly didn't understand boundaries. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't snooping. I was annoyed. So I glanced at the screen to silence it. And that's when the world tilted. The contact name read, Office Emergency. Goo. Very corporate. Very fake. The preview text had nothing to do with emergencies. It said, I miss you already. Counting the hours. Rooms taken care of. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. What I felt was something colder. Sharper. Like clarity, snapping into place, so cleanly it hurt. My body reacted before my mind did. My shoulders went tight. My jaw locked. But I didn't storm into the bathroom. I didn't shout her name. I didn't confront her dripping wet with accusations she could spin. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table. And I read. Message after message. Not frantic. Not reckless. Planned. Weeks turned into months. 6 of them. Late nights labeled work emergencies. Weekend conferences. Business trips that suddenly had hotel names and inside jokes attached. Every, I love you. She sent him while telling me she was exhausted. Every excuse delivered with steady eye contact. Every lie practiced so often it had lost its edge. I felt strangely calm, like my emotions were standing back, watching my brain work. I screenshotted everything. Every message. Every timestamp. Then I placed the phone back exactly where it had been. Exactly. When the shower turned off, I was still sitting there. When she stepped out wrapped in a towel, smiling, relaxed, I smiled back. And that was the moment I stopped being the confused husband and became something else entirely. The next morning, Lauren moved through the kitchen like nothing had happened. Coffee, emails, that familiar confidence. I'll be working late again, she said casually. I told her I understood. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. Inside, something had already settled. This wasn't about catching her. This wasn't about yelling. This was about truth and timing. 2 days later, I found Rachel. Once I knew where to look, it was easy. Company website, leadership page. There he was. Mark, my wife's boss. And beside him, a polished smile, family photo, 2 kids. Rachel looked like someone who believed in her life. Calling her was the hardest part, not because I was scared, but because I knew what I was about to take from her. You don't accuse. You don't dramatize. You state facts. I introduced myself, explained the connection. then asked one simple question. Have you noticed changes lately? Silence answered first, then a breath she didn't realize she was holding. When I offered proof, she didn't hesitate. 20 minutes after I sent the screenshots, my phone rang. Her voice wasn't hysterical. It was controlled, focused, and when she said, "We need to talk," I knew I wasn't alone anymore. BY Friday evening, Lauren was in an unusually good mood. Home early, suggesting takeout, laughing at her phone like it was feeding her happiness by the minute. I told her someone from work might stop by briefly. She barely looked up. At 6:30 sharp, headlights washed across the driveway. I opened the door and stepped outside. Rachel stood there composed, well-dressed, eyes steady, no small talk, no negatives, just resolve. When I opened the door again and walked in with her beside me, Lauren looked up, and everything changed. Confusion flickered first, then alarm, then something close to fear. "Who is this?" she asked, already defensive. I smiled calmly. "This is Rachel." Rachel met her gaze and spoke before I could say another word. "My husband talks about you all the time." Lauren's phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. And that's where I'll pause this part, because if you're still here, you already know this story isn't about shouting. It's about what happens when lies finally meet the people they were meant to stay hidden from. 2 days later, I found Rachel. Once I knew where to look, it was easy. Company website, leadership page. There he was, Mark, my wife's boss. And beside him, a polished smile, family photo, 2 kids. Rachel looked like someone who believed in her life. Calling her was the hardest part, not because I was scared, but because I knew what I was about to take from her. You don't accuse. You don't dramatize. You state facts. I introduced myself, explained the connection, then asked one simple question. Have you noticed changes lately? Silence answered first, then a breath she didn't realize she was holding. When I offered proof, she didn't hesitate. 20 minutes after I sent the screenshots, my phone rang. Her voice wasn't hysterical. It was controlled, focused, and when she said, "We need to talk," I knew I wasn't alone anymore. BY Friday evening, Lauren was in an unusually good mood. Home early, suggesting takeout, laughing at her phone like it was feeding her happiness by the minute. I told her someone from work might stop by briefly. She barely looked up. At 6:30 sharp, headlights washed across the driveway. I opened the door and stepped outside. Rachel stood there composed, well-dressed, eyes steady, no small talk, no negatives, just resolve. When I opened the door again and walked in with her beside me, Lauren looked up, and everything changed. Confusion flickered first, then alarm, then something close to fear. "Who is this?" she asked, already defensive. I smiled calmly. "This is Rachel." Rachel met her gaze and spoke before I could say another word. "My husband talks about you all the time." Lauren's phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. And that's where I'll pause this part, because if you're still here, you already know this story isn't about shouting. It's about what happens when lies finally meet the people they were meant to stay hidden from. The room didn't erupt the way people expect moments like that to. There was no screaming, no glass shattering, no dramatic collapse to the floor. Instead, the air thickened. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Lauren stared at Rachel, then at me, then back again. Her mind was scrambling. I could see it in her eyes, running through excuses, explanations, alternate realities she'd rehearsed in private, but never expected to deploy like this. I don't know what this is," Lauren said finally, forcing a laugh that sounded brittle even to her own ears. "But you got the wrong person." Rachel didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She stepped forward just enough to make her presence undeniable. "You text my husband more than I do," she said calmly. "Most nights after 10. Sometimes after midnight." Lauren's posture changed instantly. Arms crossed, chin lifted, defense mode. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, turning to me. "Why would you bring a stranger into our home to accuse me of something so insane?" I leaned back against the wall, hand relaxed, heart steady. "She's not a stranger," I said. "She's married to Mark." The name landed like a drop plate. Lauren froze, not dramatically, but completely, like someone caught mid-step on ice. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's impossible," she stammered. You don't know anything about my work. Rachel smiled. There was no warmth in it. I know about the Marriott on Pine Street, she said. Room 814. I know about the conference that didn't exist. And I know about the message you sent him, saying you wished you didn't have to go home to him. Lauren's color drained so fast it startled me. She reached for the back of the couch, fingers gripping the fabric like it was the only solid thing left in the room. You're twisting things, she said, voice shaking now. Those were jokes. You're taking everything out of context. Context, I asked quietly. The word hung there. Is that what you call planning hotel nights twice a week? She spun toward me. You went through my phone. I didn't have to, I replied. Rachel lifted her phone. I have the same conversations, she said. From Mark's phone, word for word. Rachel didn't read theatrically. She didn't dramatize. She recited dates, times, messages Lauren had typed with ease, with affection she hadn't shown me in months. With every line, Lauren seemed to shrink. Not physically, emotionally. The certainty she'd walked into the room with dissolved sentence by sentence. Stop, Lauren whispered. Please. Rachel didn't stop right away. She finished the last message, then lowered the phone. You talked about leaving, she said. You talked about starting over. You talked about how easy it was to lie to us. Lauren shook her head violently. I never said that. I pulled out my own phone. Unlocked it. You did, I said. And I have it too. That was the moment something inside her cracked. Not shattered, cracked. She sank onto the couch, hands trembling, eyes darting between us like she was trapped in a narrowing space. How long? She asked me, barely audible. Long enough, I said. Long enough to watch you look me in the eye and lie without hesitation. She started crying then. But it wasn't regret. It was panic, loss of control. This wasn't supposed to be like this, she said. It just happened. Rachel exhaled sharply. It didn't just happen, she said. It was chosen. Again and again. Lauren wiped her face. Then something changed. Her tears stopped as abruptly as they'd started. Her shoulders straightened. I recognized that shift immediately. I'd seen this version of her before, the one that appeared when apologies stopped working. So that's it, Lauren said, her voice suddenly steady. You ambush me in my own house with his wife and think you're the hero. No one's trying to be a hero, Rachel replied. We're here because you've been lying. Lauren scoffed. You read messages. That's not a life. That's not a marriage. She turned to me then, eyes sharp. You've been distant for years. You come home exhausted. You barely talk. And when I tell you I'm unhappy, you brush it off. There it was. The pivot. Blame wrapped in justification. I nodded slowly. That's interesting, I said, because I remember planning trips you canceled, dinners you were too tired for, conversations you said could wait. She snapped back instantly. That's not the same thing. When did you tell me you were emotionally neglected? I asked. Before or after you started sleeping with your boss? Her jaw tightened. That's not fair. Neither is mocking us for trusting you, Rachel said. Neither is planning a future while laughing about how naive we were. That was venting, Lauren snapped. Everyone vents. Venting doesn't include apartment hunting, I said quietly. She froze. What? You talked about neighborhoods, lease lengths, furniture. My voice stayed calm. You weren't venting. You were planning. Her confidence wavered, just for a second. Then she doubled down. Those were hypotheticals. Fantasies. People don't coordinate hotel schedules for fantasies, Rachel said. They do it for affairs. Lauren stood abruptly, pacing now. You're acting like I woke up one day and decided to ruin everything. What happened, I said, is that you wanted two lives, and you thought you were clever enough to manage both. She stopped pacing. Face me. You're enjoying this, she accused. Watching me fall apart. I met her gaze evenly. No, I said. I'm done pretending I don't see what's right in front of me. Rachel stepped closer. You didn't just betray him, she said. You involved me without my consent. Every time I trusted my husband, every excuse I made for him, I was unknowingly protecting your secret. That's not my responsibility, Lauren snapped. The words hung there. Ugly. Revealing. I nodded once. There it is, I said. She looked at me, confused. What? That? I repeated. That's who you are when a mask comes off. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lauren demanded, "So what do you want? What is this supposed to accomplish?" I didn't rush my answer. "This," I said finally, "is about reality. No more stories. No more editing." Rachel added quietly, "And about ending this tonight." Lauren laughed, hollow and sharp. "You think you can just end it? Feelings don't work that way. Neither does trust," I replied. Her phone buzzed on the floor. Once. Twice. She didn't pick it up. "That's him," I said. "Isn't it?" She swallowed. "Yes." Rachel's expression didn't change. "He has no idea what just happened, does he?" Lauren shook her head, and for the first time that night, she looked afraid, not of us, but of what she could no longer control. "I should go," Rachel said quietly. "I have my own reality to face." Lauren looked at her, panic flashing. "You're really going to do this?" "I already am." At the door, Rachel paused. "For what it's worth," she said, "I hope one day you understand what you've done. Not to us, to yourself." When the door closed, the house felt hollow. Lauren stood in the middle of the room, arms wrapped around herself. "So this is it?" she asked. "You've already decided." "Yes," I said. "I decided when you chose secrecy over honesty." "What happens now?" "I'll let the silence answer first." Then I said, "You pack a bag. You stay somewhere else tonight." Her eyes widened. "You can't just kick me out." "I'm setting a boundary," I said. "This marriage is over." She went upstairs. 20 minutes later, she came back down with a suitcase. "I'll call you," she said. "About logistics." "Have your lawyer call mine," I replied. She left. No dramatic gudvie. Just the quiet click of a door closing on a life she'd already walked away from months earlier.